Hello and welcome to the Irish Warhammer Podcast, episode 13, where I am joined by Tom Maher, captain of the Irish Warhammer 40,000 team. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. So, we're going to be having a chat this evening about the Irish 40k international scene and the trials and tribulations of getting a team together for that going, and how people can get involved and be part of that journey. So, Tom, how did you get into 40k?
Well, it's a long story. It goes all the way back to, I think it's 3rd edition. The edition that had a Black Templars and Drukhari starter box.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and I was in school at the time, and a few friends of mine were starting to get in to 40k very, very casually, and I was kind of like, oh, this seems cool. You know, I really enjoyed the artwork and the codexes and the rulebook. It really gripped me at that time, and although I didn't have much money to actually buy the models, I still went out and I participated as best I could. I remember I got, I think my first model was a Chaos Champion, or might have been an Aspiring Champion. I'm not sure what it was called exactly.
A whole variation of them back over the years, haven't we?
Yeah, it was a little blister pack, and then I got a pot of corn red, I think, and I just slathered it all over him. And yeah, that got me into 40k anyway, and for a couple of years I just played Garage Hammer with some friends, and eventually we kind of grew out of the hobby, but always kind of kept our eye on it, you know, seeing the developments in the aesthetic of the game, you know, Ultramarines moving into that more Roman feel, seeing Knights be released, that kind of thing, but always watching from afar. As my income caught up with my interest and my shelf space expanded as well, I decided to take the plunge over COVID. Just a little hobby project, myself and a few friends. We each picked an army and we just kind of shared our progress with it, and eventually, you know, started playing games, and yeah, it's been a wild ride ever since.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's probably a story that's very familiar to a lot of people. I know it sounds very similar to my own experience, where I got into it as a teenager, and then there was the sort of the late teens, college years, where life just didn't really have a lot of time for this kind of thing, and then getting back into it in a little bit in later life. So great stuff. And did you go then? When did you start playing tournaments, events?
It was basically as soon as I had 2,000 points of an army. I started going to events in Underworld in Tala. I went to an RTT there with my Tau Empire, Fireside Enclave represent back in 9th edition. And yeah, I just got on really positively, I think, with the vibe there, and I did quite well. I had a plan for my scoring. You know, the army was probably quite well tuned for the terrain and the matchups that I got, and etc. And yeah, from then on, I just kind of kept going back and back again and again, and eventually got in touch with a few of the lads who were scouting out players for the Irish team for Warhammer 40k, the international scene. And it was at that point I was simultaneously hearing rumblings about teams as a format, and I was quite curious about how it played, and I just jumped in with both feet.
Lovely. Yeah. Again, I think something that is important to say to people as well is that those tournaments and especially the one-dayers are a great way to just get out there and play some games and meet some other people who also just want to get out and play games. You know, not every one-dayer is a cutthroat competitive environment.
The sweatbox, yeah.
Yeah, that there's a lot of people who are just out there to play some games, and usually after a round or two, you have found your place, and you will, no matter what, you will get some enjoyable games in there.
Totally.
And yeah, so that was the start of the teams.
Yeah, that was the start of the teams thing. I kind of came into the I kind of joined the team halfway through their 22-23 cycle, and there was a late addition, but they were in need of an eighth player, and I went to Home Nations and I brought Zinch Demons with me. And I mean, any monkey could have played that army at that time. It was just how good are you at rolling
But
three
you
up invulnerable saves.
You were the monkey who did it, though, and that's important.
I was the monkey who did it. Yeah, no, but I had a great time. That was in Wrexham in Wales, and yeah, it was my introduction to the international scene, so to speak. Just kind of meeting players from all around the British Isles, and yeah, from there on, went to WTC, and I've been every year since.
Excellent, yeah. And historically, how did it go that year? Historically, the Irish team has always had a good run in Wales. Wales was the first Six Nations, and the first one that we won.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, no, that year, I don't think, if memory serves, it went so well. I think we really struggled with a few of our composition picks in that event. I was okay, I think, and a few of the others were okay, but there was a few armies we brought along that were just slightly not up to the task of the meta, and we really suffered from that on the scoreboard.
And I think that's something that recently, with the advent of, say, more internet lists, has become a bigger thing. We used to have a description for this back in the days before sort of 5th edition, those early ETCs, is that we had very much sort of a micro meta that didn't gel into a lot of the other UK things, and as a result, we ended up with quite an advantage with people who were very familiar with their lists and the way they played. But I think a lot of that has gone now. There's sort of a homogeny in the scene, for better or worse.
Yeah, I think that's true, Richard. The world is getting smaller in many respects, and I don't think Warhammer is any exception. And I think it's in some ways a natural aspect of the game, right? That you spend so much time invested in preparing an army, so much time actually playing the game, 3 hours plus. You don't want to show up and just spend the whole time feeling miserable and be like, why did I bother playing, painting this unit, or my army, I thought it could do this thing and it can't actually do that, in a live fire environment. And so I think it's a natural aspect of people just wanting to start out in the front foot, to kind of take cues from other people who've already put in a lot of work to develop a list idea or a concept or figure out a meta. But I think there's still a place for that kind of off-meta or anti-meta. You just need to do it. Yeah, you just need to be careful about how you do it, right? You have to be thorough. You have to be scientific about it,
Yeah. And now you have progressed to the captain's seat.
That's right, yeah.
What drove that decision?
Well, it was in some ways it was a difficult decision, and in other ways it was an easy one, right? Because my experience from the outside looking in was that the captaincy was a lot of work, right? But
definitely, this is the seat. It's a seat that I have been in now, albeit it was about 15 years ago, but still.
Yeah, totally. There's like a lot of very boring administrative tasks. There's like a political dimension to it. There's like people management, high level strategic planning, that kind of thing. And it's a whole year, at the very least. If you just do it for 1 year, it's a whole year of thinking about the game and thinking about your players, thinking about your squad, the meta, etc., traveling to events, that kind of thing. So it's a really big commitment. But yeah, it was a lot of work, but I thought I was up to it, right? My life had aligned in such a way as that, I thought I could give it a good shot. And I had the time and the freedom to do it. And yeah, just kind of figured that at the stage I was at, and at the stage the team was at and the scene was at, it just felt like the right time to step up and give back in some respects, right? Because the team had been quite, kind and welcoming to me in the past, and I was kind of like, look, maybe I could do that for the team in return.
Yeah, very, very good. And so something that I personally struggled with was the choice about whether to be a playing or non-playing captain. What drove your sort of decision there? What were your feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very real question. And I think the higher the standard at the international level, the more real the question it becomes, right? Because it feels like every year your competitors are better and better prepared, and the need for dedicated roles and for delegation becomes greater and greater. I just love playing Warhammer too much, to be honest, Richard. The action is the juice for me, as they said in the Michael Mann film. I felt like I could balance the two aspects of it.
I get you 100%. That's very much where I would fall into it as well. And I've been very involved now with the AOS team over the last 4 years, and specifically haven't gone for any of the committee positions because I just want to play Warhammer, and I've put myself in my availability that way, and kind of said but I've always ended up doing stuff in the background anyway. But
oh yeah,
there's no escaping that.
No.
If you show you can do anything sort of organizational, you will get roped in forever. Which, I mean, you still sort of have on the 40k side, you've still got people like Alec and Paul Quigley hanging around there in the background.
That's right. And look, I wouldn't be able to do it without the people helping me out. In previous years, the captaincy might have been like a one-person job. Maybe you had a vice captain who could help out. Is my understanding, at least. And since COVID, at least, on the 40k side of things, there's been a sort of an expansion into a council model where you'll have people who are dedicated logistics people who are dedicated coaches, people who are dedicated to strategy pairings, and who all have different strengths that we can kind of combine into an Ultron or a Megatron that can guide the ship, so to speak. And that's my vice captain, Chris. He's a non-playing vice captain, and he's really invaluable in that respect.
Yeah, no, it's. I definitely think it's become a much more important role from the Sigmar side as well. We hadn't, and then did get some non-playing sort of staff, and the difference was immense. You're just letting people be able to focus on their role and their job without having to spread themselves too thin over the day. It's different when you're at home doing your bits and pieces here, but especially at the events, Six Nations, Worlds, it's a different level. You're in a different zone, I think, in your head.
Absolutely. Like, even just small things like, where are we going for dinner? Somebody has to figure that out. And if you're round 5 trying to squeeze the last point of differential scoring out of your game, you're not thinking about that, and you don't want to be, but somebody has to.
Yeah.
And
it's just sort of, that's a really good point, and just putting something to mind. So what are your days like when you're at an event? Early starts, late starts, long days?
Yeah, well, it really depends on the event, but in general,
the international, sort of more specifically.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So, for example, there are often single days that we will devote to maybe going up north to scrim with the Northern Irish guys. And those can be quite an in and out affair. There are also weekends away that we would have done this year over to Barnsley in the UK, or to Home Nations of North Tantrum, and those are similar to a GT experience. If somebody listening is familiar with those, in that you've got 5 rounds, and you typically arrive on the Friday. But because you're a team, right? People need to strategize and negotiate pairings between rounds and that kind of thing. And you're kind of on maybe for more of the weekend. So managing your energy levels, I think, is really important. Getting a good night's sleep, and trying not to hit the bar too hard. That's really important, I find, and especially when you go away for something like WTC, which is really a week-long affair. And it's typically in quite hot weather. The physical aspect of playing the game is really important. Having good shoes, making sure you sit down, keeping hydrated, all that kind of thing. And eventually it just starts to mirror an athletic pursuit in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. There's a lot of taking that opportunity to sit whenever you can. And I know sometimes you really don't feel like you want to, because you want to be like actively engaged in the game. But it can be very important, and there's little bits that just keep you going, especially over those as I say, what are you playing over 4 days?
WTC is two rounds a day, thankfully, not 3, but still, yeah.
And I know the bar has been a stumbling block for a number of teams over the years that have been sent. And getting a good night's sleep, very important. I know there was actually a player from Team England, AOS, a couple of years ago, who was dropped completely because they stayed up past 11 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
very serious.
Yeah,
Team
very
England,
serious business.
AOS. They went to win. And they just it was pretty hardcore.
Yeah, well, that's it, and it's the kind of thing where I think whatever you do, and really it's the captain who I think needs to set the tone for this, is you all need to be on the same page, and you all need to be there for the same reason. You all want to be working towards the same goal, and you all need to be taking it as seriously as each other within a sort of a band of expectations, and I think that's where the greatest results come from, but also the greatest team cohesion. Everyone's getting along. Resentment doesn't have a chance to build, that kind of thing.
Very
I think
important.
And that tone gets set very early on in the process.
Yeah, no, that's super. But something as well that we have this year is, and I suppose maybe an important note for people who aren't so familiar with teams events, is that the lists will look a lot different to your average singles list.
That's true, yeah.
You will see things here that are head scratchers, and the idea then would be that you're never going to be played into something that maybe is a counter or foil to your list. But I believe we're going to be talking more with Chris and Alec about the specifics of pairings and that kind of things. But I suppose just sort of at a higher level, we now have these dispositions which are going to throw a big spanner in sort of traditional planning for an event like this. So how are you getting on with those and adding those into your thought process?
Yeah, I mean, it's an extra dimension of complexity to the game that was already quite complex, right? So initially it was a real whirlwind to try and process the different primary missions that you have to account for with each disposition, trying to identify patterns in scoring to see where the strengths and weaknesses of each lie, and that's quite a methodical process, just kind of working through it one by one, keeping notes and many spreadsheets. But the longer you stare at it, the more sense it makes. And we're now at a stage where I think we've internalized the vagaries of these dispositions quite effectively across the team. And we're starting to really understand the limitations of some over others, what that means for pairings, as Chris and Alec will get into, and what it means for faction assignments as well, as far as players are concerned. And as well, the psychological element, the human element of the team, playing to players' strengths as well, where some dispositions will favour certain kinds of play, certain kinds of armies, and you really want to not lead with dispositions first, or factions first, or archetypes first. These all need to be synergistic. They all need to work together to create something really optimal that can also synergize with the wider team composition. So if people are getting ready to go to singles events at the moment, there are some dispositions and some armies that you can really just transplant a team's list into a singles format. But as you said, once lists start coming out, and we've seen some team events like ATC over in the States, 8-man and 5-man teams, we've seen those lists now. There is an element of zigging and zagging to try and get certain lists into really optimal pairings, and that's where those big wins come from, ideally.
Yeah. I think looking in at this, I think you've got a great scope here for really, if you know your players, really hammering home the play style that they're good at. And I think then that needs an extra effort from your backroom team to help find those players, the right list, the right army. But I think as well in a singles environment, and sort of maybe somebody looking to get involved, there's great scope there to become a specialist. So if you are a recon specialist, you're able to put yourself out there a little bit more and say, look, I can do this. I might not win these games, which you're expecting that they wouldn't win, but I nearly always win this game that I should always win, and that can be a valuable tool as well for someone in your position.
Yeah, absolutely. And in previous years we would have looked at faction specialism as being really valuable in a similar way. And what we're finding as we explore the dispositions, this new element of the game, is that while initially we were expecting the dispositions to be very different from each other, we're finding that they're less different and less imbalanced. So they're actually quite balanced than we initially expected, right? And so that comes back to this synergy where a good take and hold player can look actually quite different depending on the army they're playing. And they can both be good take and hold players, for example. It really is just quite complex, and it relies on setting the right tempo, understanding not only your scoring but your opponent's scoring as well, and understanding their capabilities, how able they are to score their primaries and what they want to be doing in order to score their primaries. So there's not only a lot of research into your own factions that you need to do, but also being aware of the wider meta, the full range of possibilities that you could be facing across the table from you, and then thinking on the fly about what that means for the game you're about to play, or the game you're currently playing.
Yeah.
So it's really thinking on your feet is as big a thing as it's ever been, I think, in 40k.
Very good. Yeah, it's something you just said there. It sort of sparked a memory. It was one of the bits when I sort of getting back into the more competitive elements of 40k in the last sort of 18 months or so. I was having a chat with Pierce Condren at Broadsword, and I was saying, this is very different from when we were playing a lot in 5th edition. And I said to him, what are you doing to keep up, or what's keeping you thinking? And his simple answer was, he knew everything in the game and what it did. And I was sort of just going, oh, right, okay, yeah, that's effectively what we were doing in 5th edition, but now that knowing everything that's in the game is a much more challenging task, I think.
Yeah, it's more challenging, but it's also more rewarding, I find, right? So there's that extra incentive. I think it's no longer or I'm not sure if it ever was this, but I would quite often read my friends' codexes just out of curiosity, really, and just be like, "Oh, look at the rules you have. You guys are so, your army is so great compared to mine. My army can't do this, or oh, my army's way better at this than yours." But now there's like a real advantage to it that you can flex at the table, and I think as well from GW side of things, they've done a great job at formalizing, I think, a lot of the way the game is played. There are way fewer weird edge cases, kind of forgotten mechanics that only come up once every 100 games, that you're kind of like, wow, I had no idea this was even a thing anymore. How on earth am I going to play around it? Everyone has access to like advances and charges, reactive moves, various healing mechanics, all that kind of thing. And I think that kind of makes it a little bit easier to keep up.
Yeah. I think another great part, and one of my favourite things about 11th is they have numbered the rulebook and split things down into subsections. I have seen rules discussions on Discord and Facebook that would have taken weeks to resolve, like people misquoting rules or getting a little word wrong here and there as they're copying something in, and now it's like, oh yeah, look at 16.02, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I know exactly where to go, I know exactly the rule, and they're like, yes, but did you look at 20.05? And sort of going, oh, right, okay, yeah, cool, that relates to that, perfect. And I think that has been a really good change for the game.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I remember sitting in my friend's garage when I was 12 years old, reading the rule book and being kind of like, I have no idea how to resolve this situation that we found ourselves in. And literally ringing up a Games Workshop, like, retail store and being kind of like, can you guys solve this dispute for us?
Yeah, and that was it. I mean, like, if you wanted to find the rules for monsters, you were bouncing between maybe 4 sections of a rulebook where there was little lines in additional rules and like add-ons to sometimes rules that didn't really make sense. So no, this is a really good change. But
it's much more streamlined, yeah.
Yeah, much more streamlined. I suppose we're going a little bit off topic there. Let's just steer us back a little bit. How did you select your team, Tom?
Well, it's like painting a picture. It's an art rather than a science, where it's a combination of lots of different factors. One being, obviously performance at the table. There's very little arguing with success on a leaderboard. Other factors are things like, what does the person like to play? If they're a good opponent, a good sport, that goes a long way as well. I think that's something that's really valued within the 40k community, and rightly so, especially at the international stage. I think it's really important to play the game in the spirit that it's intended to be played in. Flexibility was also a really important factor this year, and experience was also a huge factor, because we knew when we were facing down the 25-26 season that there was a possibility we would be playing WTC on 11th edition, and when that became clear following a captain's vote, we knew that we would have to squeeze a lot of work into a very short amount of time, and we would need all hands on deck, and that also meant that we would need players to act autonomously and to bring a lot of their own judgment and their own expertise from previous editions to the fore, to kind of help recognize patterns, to help recognize advantages, disadvantages, that kind of thing. So that was a really big factor in choosing the team.
Yeah. So you're getting, what, about 10 weeks of prep time?
Oh, I've stopped counting the weeks.
Okay, right. Okay.
We kind of look. We just put one foot in front of the other, and hope it all works out. But yeah, like the edition released formally, I think about 2.5 weeks ago, and WTC is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So yeah, it's about 10 weeks all told. to try and figure out how to play, not only how to play the game, but how to play it to an international standard. So it's no mean feat.
Yeah, no, and I can relate. Even trying to throw a couple of lists together myself, and then you bring it to a table, and within 10 minutes you kind of go, this doesn't work, and then it's like, oh, straight back to the drawing board. But at the same time, those games can be very handy for just getting those reps in to learn the rules.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, to the point of how I selected my squad as well, there's a sort of a magic that happens when you can kind of see the matrix of, what each of your players is best suited towards. Some players are really good list writers. Some players are really good at finding diamonds in the rough. Other players are really good at taking something that somebody else developed and just executing on it really well.
That was always my speciality. Give me somebody else's list, and I'll add. I could get 5 or 10% extra in there.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I see people really jump through rings online and in person, jump through hoops trying to write lists that are unique to their own list. They've come up with it from scratch, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's very fun to do, but it's a separate skill to playing the game, I think. And at a certain point, I'm like this. I just need to accept that no amount of writing lists is going to make me better at writing lists. So I just need to offload that to somebody else. Maybe I'll have a bit of input here and there, but just kind of concentrating on what you're good at, especially in a team environment, is something that I think can be quite supported by the format.
Yeah, it's important to recognise one's own weak spots as well. I know from my own experience that I am not someone who should be doing pairings. It is not my jam. I don't have the twistiness in my head for looking at all those different permutations all at the same time. Let me play games.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's great.
Yeah, so it's a wild world out there.
So, say, the aspiring international player out there amongst my possible tens of listeners, what could they do to get involved? What are the first steps?
Well, there's a few different ways you can get involved, but the easiest one, I think, is to download a little program called Discord and create an account and join the Team Ireland 40k Discord. We have various sections on the Discord that are suitable for people who are more hobby focused, people who enjoy talking about the lore, people who just love Warhammer video games. There's places there for people to discuss it, as well as a calendar of events and places people can discuss lists, that kind of thing. They're open to everybody, international Warhammer players, national Warhammer players, and everything in between. So I would advise people to sign up there. Tell us where you're from, what's your first name, so we know what to call you when we're talking to you, and look for games in the Looking for Game channel, and just gradually kind of get to know the people who are most active in the Discord. And I think that's a great first step. Showing up to events like Broadsword you mentioned before, GaelCon, Jarg Doom. There's an Athlone team event which has been sold out for quite a while, but I'm sure there'll be another one. Those events are all meeting places in the Irish community where you'll get to play people like myself and possibly yourself as well, Richard. But also you'll get to meet lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, and they're really positive experiences, I think.
Definitely. I must say now, I've only been on the Discord about must be 2 or 3 weeks now at this point, but it has been a super place to just see and meet like-minded people and go through a few things. And I must say, one of the bits that I've really enjoyed is the little rules Discord channel on it. It's really nice to just be able to see a couple of those things that might have pass you by, or just to get confirmation on, yeah, that's working the way I've thought. I've a great value out of it, and there's nothing like discussing something you love with other people who also love it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's even a channel in there full of curated videos, guides, things like that for upping your game, which I think would be really useful for people who are starting out, especially to just kind of leapfrog a lot of those early steps. So yeah, something for everyone there, hopefully.
Fantastic. And yes, and then as you said, events, which we will be trying to announce more of on here, and we might try and get a link for the Discord into the episode description for this today.
Yeah, I'll send that on to you.
Fantastic. So there, and yes, events. So I think COVID did a number on events, and where there used to be an event at nearly every university convention and a lot of the independent conventions, when those sort of went away for a couple of years, it took them a while to get back up. So I'm familiar with Broadsword. I've been out there, fantastic event. I'm familiar with the ones more locally in Underworld, the great regular events, great crowd down there. I recently visited the event that was on in Tipperary that Derek Doom ran, so that was super. It was lovely to go down there. They had fantastic terrain footprints that had the building outlines drawn onto them, so that the actual terrain didn't make as big a difference. So that is they were really nice. Is there anywhere else that I'm missing?
Yeah, well, there are Jerry Doom, as you said. They kind of help out, especially in the south. Cork, Waterford, Tipperary, Peter Gelfie and Dara down there. They've put in a lot of work into their terrain, and they're very active with loaning that terrain out to other people who are looking to run events. Down in Waterford, they run events regularly. Southeast Siege, I think it's called. The next one is in August 22nd, 23rd, I believe. They're quite cool, and they've great trophies if you do go down there. GaelCon is on every year in the north of Dublin. That's always worth a shout. Broadsword, Jerry Doom, as he said, up north in Donegal and in Bangor, just outside Belfast. They both run regular GTs that are very well attended, and I haven't made it up to either of them yet, but I do intend to once the whole WTC thing calms down a little bit. But yeah, the community is really grown since I've joined, and from my understanding is starting to return to what it used to look like pre-COVID.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that, as you say there, in Bangor and Exploding Dice is a fantastic setup. A fully independent games club that has all their own space, and it's really, really nice. But yeah, I mean, there was a period there before COVID where there were events in Galway, in NUIG. You had events in Maynooth, Dublin, UCD. You had Leprechaun with Trinity. Then Cork, often events on down there. Limerick, Clare. Yeah, I mean, it was hopping.
Yeah.
It was, but it would be it's so good to get some of that up and going again, you know.
Yeah, and like there are smaller one-day events happening in places like Dundalk, Drogheda, Wicklow, Kildare, and lots of other places around the country as well. So my hope is that as GW has started to standardise the terrain format that they think the game should be played on, and more events internationally adopt that terrain, that will make it hopefully easier for people to put events on, because people understand that there's a certain kind of terrain that they're going to be playing on. the expectation is that when they show up, they'll know what it is they're going to be playing on.
Yeah.
It'll make it just a little bit easier for people to visualize the event. You know?
I think
accessible
before,
is the right word. Yeah.
There was definitely an element of especially when the WTC was using its own terrain that was set out, that was definitely a bit denser than GW terrain, and there was, sort of people would go to something and at a WTC terrain, it was like, oh, well, my army isn't used to this and I'm not used to this, so that's a bit of a... Well, that's gone now. Yeah. So it's all the same. It's the same terrain, and we have, at least a year of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's another great accessibility change, both for people just to play the game and for prospective players for getting interested or involved in the international stuff. Is you are playing the same game, whereas before there were a few differences.
Yeah, like you were looking at lists online and you're kind of like, wow, this guy was able to run this at this event and he came first, and then you try it out in a local event and you realize it doesn't work so well because the terrain is different. No longer. Yeah, I think it's going to be great.
That's a really good change. So I think just one final little bit now before we finish up. This is sort of to get up to that standard. If people are looking to up their game a bit and try to compete and show themselves as being potential candidates, where would you direct someone, or what would you direct them to do, Tom?
I think there's really no substitute for playing games. Just playing them out, all 5 turns, and being thoughtful about the decisions you're making to the point where you verbalize what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think many players struggle, and I've experienced this myself, where your opponent is presenting you with a board state. They've gone first, for example. They've moved units up to scorecards or occupy objectives or whatever. And, you just don't really have a game plan. You're kind of like a deer in the headlights. And you're like, well, I know I should try and get over to that objective, but I'm not really sure how is the best way to do that. I think starting out very simply, and you start in deployment even, just set up your units in your deployment zone and give each of them a role, whether you go first or go second. So if I go first, this unit will move out here and do this thing. If I go first, they'll move out and do this thing. If I go second, well, they're safe, and then they're in a position to do something else on my turn 1. I think that's a really easy change that people could make straight away to their games, is just talk about what you're doing and why.
Yeah. Now that's something that I noticed. I played a game a couple of months ago with Ian Wilson, and even just the start, first turn, he was like, right, I'm set up here, I have this can move to the center location, so I can do establish locus. Boom. And he just went through very simply all the things, and it was it felt like a really nice way to start yourself into the game and make yourself feel comfortable with playing before you start even worrying about all the other decisions.
Yeah, and I think as well, especially if you're nervous, right? First game of a GT or something like that, you're a new player, you don't know the person who's across the table from you. It not only calms your nerves, because maybe you are following a script that you've developed for your turn 1, and you're introducing a bit of familiarity into an otherwise anxious experience. But it also begins a dialogue with your opponent, which I think is really important for maintaining a pleasant game throughout the 5 turns.
The tone early.
Yeah, and you're expressing what your intention is. Yeah. You're measuring things out. So then, if a terrain piece gets knocked or a model gets knocked or something like that, and it turns out you're actually not able to reach a certain position on the table, your opponent's like, well, you measured that out, we saw you did it, and I'm happy to just let you do that. something obviously got knocked or whatever, or you're kind of saying, oh, my intention here is for this charge that you make to be 9 inches or something like that. And then if your opponent goes to measure it and it turns out to be 8 inches, they're kind of saying, well, look, you intended for it to be 9 inches. Let's just maintain that. And that prevents those feel bad moments, Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us, Tom.
No problem.
I hope this will be of use and interest to people out there. And as always, you can catch us on the Irish Warhammer Podcast at gmail.com if you wish to send anything into us, and we will include the various links to the things below. All right. Thanks very much for listening, folks. Goodbye.
Bye.